G'day guys, Ben here. I'm super excited about today's episode of the Pumped on Property show. Now in today's episode, I had the absolute pleasure of sitting down with an incredible investor named Kevin from Sydney. Now not only has Kevin just had his first bub, but before the age of 33, he was able to buy 4 incredible life-changing investment properties up here in Queensland. Not only do Kev and I talk about his journey towards financial freedom in this podcast, but we also go deep into some of the challenges we've both faced from an anxiety and mental health perspective over the years. I'm excited to share this conversation that Kev and I had so that you can learn from his experiences and hopefully, like me, get some motivation to continue to live your best life. Awesome, mate. It's so good to have you on the show. I'm so grateful, man. I know that you've just had a bub and breaking away a little bit of that time's a big thing to ask. So thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Ben. It's been a long time.
Yeah, do you want to sort of explain a little bit about your background and the journey that you've been on? Because like I said to you off camera, I don't think anyone has balled out and gone from the start of their journey to where you are as quickly as you've done it. We're just saying 4.5, 5 years maybe.
Yep. To
buy 4 properties. So before we get to that, where did all of this start? Where did you come from? What triggered this for you? What were you doing before you were investing?
Cool. So I'll jump all the way back until probably what I studied in university and sort of where I went from there. So I did a combined degree in business, majoring in finance and law.
Yeah.
And at the time, I basically only scraped through university.
Please get degrees, or?
Yeah, just please get degrees, exactly right.
Okay.
And then I landed my first job in the legal sector, just right here, down Martin Place. And it was the toughest 2 years of my life at that point in time.
Graduate program with one of the big firms, or
no,
what was
it wasn't
a
graduate program. It was a boutique law firm working with accredited specialists, there's very few of those in a specific field.
Okay.
And lawyers can sometimes be amazing lawyers, but just not the best managers.
Okay, sure.
They could be great at being lawyers, but just not the best managers. And I think the people that I was working with at the time just wasn't healthy.
Mm-hmm.
So to give you an idea, it was basically every single email that was being sent out was being checked, and
there was no trust there. Someone was freaking out.
So after every single day for 2 years, that would break your self-confidence, no matter if you thought what you were doing was correct.
Yeah, wow.
So I took a leap. I went into insurance at the time, and throughout that whole entire time, throughout university as well, I was heavily into just exercising, taking care of my physical health, right?
Yeah.
To the extent that my passion would lead me to YouTube on almost daily, weekly basis, where I'd be watching content about just technical lifting, physical lifting, everything about it.
Bro, this is my algorithm right now. On anything, it is just I'm obsessed with mobility right now.
Yeah.
And it's all coming my way. They don't miss you.
Yeah.
So just breaking into that for a second, what's the average week, month split of movement for you look like in an ideal week when you're fully rested as well?
Yeah, so I normally have about 5 training days a week.
Yeah.
I used to incorporate a lot more cardio, but recently, just with bub coming along, I have to adjust and just make sure I don't overstress my body.
Yeah.
Because I'm someone that when I do something, I like to do it well, and normally doing something well requires a lot more concentration and focus.
Yeah.
And attention. So I have to always be a little bit more conscious of just taking myself back a little bit. So normally 5 weight training days at the moment.
Okay.
And
split training, isolation,
yes.
And so you're getting full rest on one part of your body, or you're doing full body 5 days a week?
Splits.
Okay.
So I'm doing splits at the moment because that's normally what I'm passionate in.
Yeah.
And that's how it's been. I've been lucky to maintain that. I've had to sometimes tell myself that, Kevin, if you even just do 3 minimum days a week,
you'll maintain.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Don't stress yourself in needing to do 5 because you are waking up in the middle of the night. You are trying to take care of baby. You are trying to take care of your wife. And
how are you finding that, man? Because I noticed as I made that transition from 2 sessions a day, plus a surf if I wanted to, or soccer, to having kids and realizing I couldn't recover the same way.
Yeah.
And also mainly just not having the ability to do that anymore. It really broke a part of my identity, and I put a lot of pressure on myself for those first years after having my first bub.
Yep.
Because I was of course I want to do that, but it's just I was feeling guilty doing it.
I think that's a good question. And I have Hayden, your colleague, to actually thank for that. He actually sent me like this 4-burner thing,
Yeah.
which I don't know if he sent you something like that as well,
Yeah.
which is basically like in certain points of your life, you can turn up a few things to focus on and you would reduce other things. And I do the same thing with my training as well. So where I'm trying to like bring up a weak muscle group, I would focus on that and I'll take other stuff away.
Yeah.
And or reduce other stuff anyway.
Okay.
So I think if it wasn't for Hayden's like concept of that I would try to maintain work, family, physical health,
To a
like
perfect level,
everything to a
stressing
perfect
you
level
out.
by
Yeah.
stressing yourself out. But that's unrealistic. So whatever I take back, I can focus a little bit more on. So that's
We actually incorporated that into our team meetings where it's like not just coming in and going, these are the important values or focus points of the life, family, wealth creation,
Yep.
business, health, whatever. And then we would self-assess where we were at that month out of 5. And then the team would also be like, I think you've been overdoing that. I think you're calling that a 1, but that feels like because I'm the same, man. Like I'm a high performer across everything. And I'm also sort of OCD perfectionist, as you probably picked up. And I put pressure on myself to be a great dad, a good friend, a great family member, a great boss, like a great person to work with, like an investor and all the other things. And it's until Hayden brought that in, it was overwhelming and I couldn't see why I was only at half my potential across everything, and letting go of one thing and going, this month I'm really focusing on this for this reason, taking pressure off. Has it helped you?
Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just taking some pressure off myself, just trying to be a high performer in everything, like allows you to perform better in the categories that you're still choosing to focus on, and just present yourself better to the people, your loved ones anyway.
So with the 5 training sessions for weights a week, are you just dropping in a little bit of cardio at the end of each session, or did you used to split the day and do a weight and a cardio session in the day?
Yeah, so there was periods where I was doing weights and cardio sessions. I think there's probably been periods where I may have been on the phone with you while I was on the treadmill at the same time, just trying to fit in cardio.
Dude, your heart rate must have been great because I couldn't hear any heavy breathing, or maybe I was on mute.
It was a great period when I was like listening to heaps of podcasts as well, and you know, cardio is just great for podcasts anyway. Like you're not only doing physical, you're doing mental stimulation at the same time and learning things.
Do you hit train the cardio like high intensity, or do you just prolong it and sit at like the 120, 140 and of max and just sort of cruise through for duration?
Duration for me is zone 2, just because I put so much intensity into my weight training that if I do high intensity for my cardio, it will burn off all of the muscle that I've taken so long to build. Which if that's what I wanted to do, I could. But it's just that there's so much intensity in my training sessions. I have to get into such a headspace of just performing there.
Yeah, buddy. I like 100%. Man, like me and the boys, when I used to train like once or twice a day, we would just have to like rev up because like, you know, you're going to break yourself, and I'm like, I'm glad I don't do that anymore. But I remember like I could do chest and be like nailed for 6 days.
It's funny that you say that, because like coming back like to the original question that you asked me, like you do something till you break yourself. So I did something until like I basically broke myself at one point, right? So I transitioned from that law job to life insurance, and then it took obviously quite a period of time just to work through just having such intense anxiety, very, very intense anxiety. And then I got to a point where I was doing a particular exercise and I tore a ligament off my pelvic bone that required operation. And where I was normally listening to on a weekly basis all of this fitness stuff, there was no point anymore, because if I continued to listen to the fitness stuff, I couldn't train anyway. It wasn't the right time.
Yeah.
So
it
then,
makes you upset because it's like,
you're just like listening to something that you can't do. It just like burns, right?
Yeah.
And that's when I started to look into property, right? So that's sort of, and then I started to look into property, and I spoke with a few different mortgage brokers, and I spoke to a few different buyer's agents, and then I came across you guys. And I really enjoyed the feel of it, because it was just, I think at the time you were, talking about sort of your journey, resetting your journey, the mental health that you were going through as well. So I really resonated with that.
Yeah.
Especially, you at the time saying that these were all of the mistakes that you had made. And I think it takes a lot of courage to bring up all of those mistakes and share that with everyone outside, to then reset your portfolio, right? And I saw wealth in that experience, that I was like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to try to engage with this. So then I jumped into learning about property, right? And then at the time I was like smashing heaps of content.
Yeah, that's what I think is like
Smashing heaps of content,
transfer.
right?
Can I take a step back, because like, and if you know, if you're okay to talk about this, like just the mental health side, which I've struggled with and so have you, and let's get real, like name a person who's not suffering in one area or another of their life or doesn't have mental affliction. And you know, if someone's not, then I'm like, well, like, it's nice to meet you, Dalai Lama. Like, let's get real. Like, people spend 80, Thich Nhat Hanh, 90 years, and he's still chasing it. You know, it's tricky. But what was causing those afflictions now that you've got 20/20 vision looking back? Like, was it the confidence that got knocked? Was it going so hard in so many areas of your life for so long? What was bringing those emotions up for you? Was it the background you come from, where you come from high performance expectations at home? Like,
so because of performing well and doing a combined degree, then moving into a law practice, which shattered my confidence.
actually, I'm just going to take a step back. I said P's get degrees, but I'm really thinking that it was distinction to HD averages. Am I being lucky?
No, it was P's get degrees for real.
Okay, cool. All right. It's just such a heavy workload of the dual degree. Okay.
So at that, like, it was to the extent that when I started my life insurance job, like every task that I completed, I had no confidence whether I was doing a good job or not.
Wow.
And I was too scared to pick up a telephone call, to call anyone, probably for 3 or 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah, so it affected me to that extent, because they wouldn't even allow me to be on the phones at the law firm.
Wow.
Because of potential just
liability risk.
liability or whatever they thought of my quality.
Which is crazy, man, because I've had many convos with you and I would not say that you're like, you know what I mean?
It's, and then being in the insurance field, what was interesting was because of that hardship that I experienced back in the law field, my resilience was beyond that of anyone that I worked with. And it was just like, my standards had already been high. I've always had a high standard. It's just like bringing that confidence to meet that like standard, and then using that resilience to come into work. And then my progression, like it was like 6 months of, it was interesting because the first 6 months I was in life insurance, they were questioning whether to let go of me by the probation mark at the 6 month mark. At the 6 month mark, the pin dropped. Everything made sense, and then I started to have quick promotions after that.
Wow.
And then progress like very, very quickly
They saw the quality.
Yeah, they saw the quality.
That baptism of fire you went through was actually what you were meant to go through.
That's right.
But it's bloody hard when you're in it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I wouldn't trade it, like going through all of that, because now I think it allows me to understand it, because like you said, who hasn't experienced some form of mental health, right? And my wife, fortunately for her, she's complete opposite of me. She's not an overthinker on the spot. You know, she like, I'd be stressing about something and she'd be like, what she'd be stressing about would be, it wouldn't even be stressing about, would be like, what am I going to eat tomorrow? Or what am I going to wear today? Right?
It's like, oh babe, just some, in those dark moments, or the dark nights of the soul that we've both gone through, like sometimes I'm like, can we just switch?
Yeah.
Like I'm just suffering here and you're just like, exactly that. And it's the perfect yin and yang. And I think it's why we both found them, to like constantly reground us, right?
That's exactly right. And, you know, love her to bits, and she really helps ground me and balance me. And I think just going through all of that allows me to, like, you know, one day my son is old, and even more children, when they go through their own stuff, I'm hoping that it gives me the opportunity to be able to communicate to them in a way that comes from empathy.
Love that.
So that's going to be, if I never went through it, I would never be able to communicate to the extent that I can.
And don't you reckon, like, now that you're older as well, like just in the environment, you understand like the things that people are transferring onto you are generally from their own afflictions, right? And it's like it's not from a judgment place anymore. It's like, oh man, I just really feel sorry for where you're at most of the time now, because like I can see what you can't see in yourself, because I didn't just see it and stay in it. I'm like, why? And just, you know, I'm super grateful. So you went into the insurance job, you hurt yourself, you've been sort of forced into looking at a content field that's a little bit different. You're consuming podcasts. Was there any cool ones out there outside of ours that you were vibing on? Like, did you ever get onto the Property Couch guys or anything like that? I did.
I was listening to the Property Couch a lot at that time as well, at the same time, but at that time it was still quite advanced for me.
Yeah.
And I think what I particularly liked about your style was simplicity. the simplicity of it really hooked me on. I think after that, it springboarded me to look into other things and learn other things, and like just like enjoy just investing and financing. Like my parents know a thing or two about investing, but they're quite comfortable with investing within, you know, their little circle in their community, right? Yeah. And I think it takes a lot. Obviously, I completely understand that, like, for them to think about buying a property in a completely different state where they can't even physically touch it, like they would have to fly over there. But I think it's...
which is super normal, right?
It's super normal.
That's how everyone feels. Like, you want to be able... I still get every week, I just would love to be able to drive past it. And I'm like, completely get it. Like, my first few properties were where I could drive past it. Yeah.
And, but I think, you know, you're just really limiting yourself, because obviously opportunity costs on such a big investment that if you pull the wrong decision, like, you know, there's nothing wrong with this. A lot of people buy their principal place of residence and negatively gear. They can't claim the interest that's not tax deductible if they live in it. And they end up feeling like they can't leave their job because they have to continue to make those repayments, because otherwise the rent's not, like, they're living in it anyway, right? That's what people normally do.
Yeah.
So often, you know, people come across jobs that they really dislike and they don't want to be there. And then you don't really even have an opportunity to take 3 months off because you need to continue to make these repayments. To have a mental break for yourself, you have to, like, the only way is you have to find another job. And then you have to, like, look to ensure that has enough money to sustain what you want to sort of live in anyway. So it's tough. It's tough out there.
It's really tough. Like, did you ever end up reading that book, The Secret Life of Real Estate and Banking?
I haven't. Okay. I know you've mentioned a lot of this channel. I hear it all the time, but I haven't read that book.
Honestly, man, it's just if you ever do, read the last 15 pages, because that is the book summarized. But yeah, there's this part in it where they talked about the structure of why the system is as it is. And apparently when people were first coming into America from England, you heard this before?
I have, because I listened to it on your podcast and you've mentioned this.
Yeah. Yes. I'll just like really quickly recap it, but effectively people were coming in, there was so much free land and such. America, from one side to the other, is like one of the most fertile places on the planet. Obviously there's their bits and pieces, but it was so profitable for someone to come across with nothing and create something that they couldn't get labor, because it's like, well, I can just go peg out my own free land and subsist and then create overflow and just send it back to the UK or whatever. So they sat down, whoever these people were, and said, well, we need labor. Let's create a land value that takes about 20 years of that labor to pay it off.
Yep.
And that's crazy when you think about it. And we're still doing the same thing. Like, we want to create taxpayers that help everybody else. And I love that in Australia. Like, I love the hospitals, the schools, the roads, the transport, but it's built in a structure that, like, no matter how much you earn, it's always going to be relative to, like, the market will just jump the price to end up being about 20 to 30 years to own it outright.
Yeah.
And so you and I avoided on our property journey going for that expensive home first that shackles us for the next 15 to 20 years before you can even start thinking about investing. And it's changed both of our lives for the better in terms of the choices we can make.
100%.
So you're learning about investing, and then what made you sort of start going, okay, I'm getting a plan in place, I'm getting more confident I can do this?
Yep. So because I studied finance, I'm well aware that, like, just if you have your money in your bank account, you're losing to inflation already, right? So I knew that I wanted to invest in something. And I think right before jumping into property, I had put some money into some alt cryptocurrency.
Okay.
That did not do very well, because the problem with alt cryptocurrency is sometimes due to the hype, you buy at the peak. And then because of a whale, which is someone that holds a lot of that specific cryptocurrency, they sell, the value drops significantly.
Wow, okay.
Right, and then you make that loss. So having, and I think every, not every young person, but some young people, such as myself, they want quick money, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's a good lesson. Luckily didn't invest that much at the time, but it's a good lesson to learn that there are better ways. Like, how can I simplify investing such that it's easy for me to understand, easy for me to do and execute on.
And consistent, safe, and who doesn't want to make quick money when you're young?
Exactly.
All I wanted to do was be financially free by 30 when I was 24. And I'm like, I would chase everything that was shiny and made a lot of mistakes because of that.
Yeah, and it's funny that we're talking about this, because I remember speaking to my mortgage broker at the time, and I, would listen to a few different podcasts, and there's a lot of hype around like buyers agents at that period of time that had like 20, 30, 40 properties inside their portfolio.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, that's what I want. I want that. I want that. Yeah. That's amazing. That sounds like wealth. I could get Lamborghinis and everything. And then my mortgage broker was like,
wrap them purple or green.
My mortgage broker basically said, like, when you have that many properties, there's a lot of maintenance, there's a lot of things that you got to do in order to sustain that. And I think that was one of the buyers agents that I spoke to who had heaps at the time. And he just wanted to.
He did ball out hard. It's so inspiring.
He just wanted to generate like a lot more money from his buyer's agency business, and at that point, I felt like he was no longer unbiased towards his customers because he's trying to just get them in so that he can sustain his own property portfolio. And I think that's one of the things I respect about you, Ben, because now that you have really dwindled your own portfolio, it's a complete reflection of that, because then you don't even need the customers to sustain your portfolio, right? The customers that you choose to help out, then you can actually really support them, because even if they didn't join, then cool. you could still do your own thing. Like you wouldn't need that to sustain a 30, 40 property portfolio that you have. And there's some buyers agents that I still listen to on YouTube that create amazing content. Yeah. Right, but I know that that's their strategy, and hats off to them. It works for them. They want to buy that $500,000 like thing and buy heaps of them, and that's the sort of strategy that they promote to their audience.
Yeah,
great, but
great business strategy. If instead of buying one great property, buy 3 cheaper ones. I've seen some of them even go split $1 million into 4, 5, and we were talking about, and you can. That's a great business model, but it's like, oh man. Units in Darwin and then they dip 40% after you buy them is not a great long-term experience for a client. Yeah. And I think less is definitely more.
Exactly right. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why I saw value in what you did at the time, especially once you reset your property portfolio. I was like, wow, I don't think people would notice that this is my property portfolio. I think you mentioned you woke up one day and you told your wife that, like, babe, I think we've got to sell everything. And then you did it, and I think it takes a lot to do that.
Pay a lot of tax too, man.
Yeah, pay a lot of tax as well, right? So capital gains tax like crazy.
But it's worked out because the benefit that you have, man, is every property that you made was a strategic decision. Quiet street, undervalued suburb, right market, right timing, right land size, right house component. Maybe not all of them are perfect houses now, but they got good bones that over time you'll clean up and see rental increases, tax benefits, and also like value increases as well.
Yeah. And at the time, like, my mortgage broker asked me the question, like, what makes you happy? What will make you happy in the long term?
Great question.
Right? And then I had to work backwards from there. And then that was just a simple question of just replacing what I was earning at the time. Which, mind you, the property portfolio that I've set up now will do that. Like, even with the inflation, like, it's done a little bit better than that. And I've just recently calculated all the numbers because I'm just working through refinancing and all of that stuff at the moment. So it's just great to see all of that come through to fruition. So
that's beautiful, man. I'm happy to hear that. And in the back of my head, I can see your portfolio, and I'm like, just from a risk perspective, firstly, it's massively reduced your overall risk position as that LVR's gone from high, as it has to be when we start, through gains coming much lower. And then I know where the rent returns should sit, but I also know you're a very kind guy, and they're probably not all sitting maybe where they could be on the jump, but that's exciting too. And then many of them have value add opportunity too down the line. You bought that first property, and that's where most people stop, and that's completely cool. Like, one property is all my grandma did, and it completely changed her future. It enabled her to retire in style with full care. Then you decided to go like Super Saiyan.
Yeah. What decided to do property 2, property 3, property 4, right?
Yeah.
So at the time, the strategy was 2 property, 2 granny flats.
That's what I thought. Right?
Yeah. Great strategy. Right?
Simple strategy.
Simple strategy, right? Which is what I love. I love simplicity.
Yeah.
Then after buying the first one and working with the team, I flew up to Queensland at the time, met up with Crystal, and Crystal was lovely at the time. She made a big impact in our life, right? And then I think 2 years had passed. 2 years had passed. I'd added granite flat to the property.
Yeah.
And it was doing well. And then, like, during that time, like, COVID had happened in around about that time. There's obviously a lot of stimulus cash being injected into the market, and with a limited number of houses, everything has to go up because money goes up. There's only a limited number of houses. Everything else has to go up as well.
Did you know that, like, logically without studying finance, or was that something that you learned along the way, like just where money flows when they print too much of it?
So you know how we were talking about P's get degrees? So luckily I had one amazing friend that got me through finance.
Okay.
And none of that stuff really clicked for me during that point in time. And it wasn't until I started jumping into investing, because after I do property, right, then the next thing I jump onto, like maybe a year or 2 years ago, was I started learning about shares, because I was like, I want to sort of learn how to sort of put money in a different field and then do it in a simple way, because I was inspired from Pumped on Property. And I spent a whole entire like period just really focused and trying to come up with a simple way. And mind you, there is a very, very simple way, you know, just dollar cost average into like index. That's what a lot of people do, right?
So even Warren Buffett said like 90% of his wealth is like dollar cost average into the index with his wife. Like, she's like, I don't believe my own team can beat the index with her money in the future.
Simplify.
So what strategy did you decide for stocks, just for my personal interest in learning?
Yeah, so I didn't end up choosing stocks in the end, because, which I can go into a little bit about later as well, but I came to like, because at the time when I was doing all my property stuff, my little sister was doing stocks.
Okay.
Right, and she was at the time 22, 23. So she was dollar cost averaging just to deal with like variances throughout the years of ups and downs into an index.
Okay.
Right? Into an index ETF.
Yeah.
Right.
Some points in the year she'll pay top of market, other points in the year she'll pay 15%, 10% below, and it averages out, right?
And then that's exactly right. So I'd worked out at that like when I was looking into stocks, like I would need a $2 million portfolio in order to draw 4%. I'm sure you may have heard of the 4% rule already.
Yeah, the FIRE community.
Yeah, the FIRE community.
As well.
In order to just sustain living, and I've met people that do this. And then because I had already jumped into property, and by this point in time I was already on property number 4, like it didn't make sense for me now to take some of my money there to put it in shares long term, because I have to go back to what is my goal now. And my goal now is actually to buy a principal place of residence.
Yeah.
So if I put money into stocks, at some point, if I needed money to purchase my principal place of residence, I would have to sell. And capital gains tax takes a lot of that as well, right?
Yeah.
On top of my income,
Yeah.
it's added income. So I had to choose sort of what was the best asset. And that's when I started looking into crypto again.
Okay.
Because I met a lovely friend when I was living in the city here. And he'd basically taken out all of his money to put into, like, out of CBA to put into a specific crypto.
Okay.
And he was like talking to me about it, and I had told him, I'd been burnt, but I'm not silly enough that if I'm burnt, like I was burnt initially because I didn't know enough. Now, if I learn a little bit more and I took like my ability to learn from like properties and shares to learn crypto, because that was like one of the topics I decided to learn.
You know how to learn now.
Yeah. I then felt like, okay, this is sort of what I would jump into in order, like I could see that this asset class would take me closer to my principal place of residence, potentially, instead of, and I was thinking of every strategy I could. At the time I was thinking like, should I put another granny flat on one of my properties? Right, but then by doing so, over like 10 years, I would make back that money that I used to inject into building the granny flat. However, that money that I need is actually for the principal place of residence. So it would take me further away from that goal. So every time I thought of a specific strategy, and then I was like, okay, if I can't do that, maybe I should take out additional money, salary sacrifice into self-managed super fund to buy property through there, which I listened to like a seminar on.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, that works as well. But I'm like, but that also takes away from my like decision, like it's the wrong pathway to principal place of residence. It's not what I need now. So sure, those two may be great strategies later on down the track after I do my principal place of residence, but it's always when you never, like, I find for myself, when I don't know what to do, always look back at the goal. If it's taking me further away from the goal, then maybe it's not the right thing to do at this time.
I love
It
that.
could be for later.
Where's that mentality come from, man? Like, where did you pick up that skill set and which part of your life? Because I think I got that from training personally.
Yeah, it was actually from my mortgage broker. Actually, he seems to make a massive impact. And I think at the time, both you and my mortgage broker was really, really helpful during that time. And then, so what happens, like, so after I did the first property with the granny flat, one, I saw how easy it was, right? And I knew that, like, you set me up with a good team. Then I knew that with that property and the granny flat, that alone would not be able to get me to my goal when I go back to that goal, right?
Yeah.
So my goal was just to replace my income. So then I needed another property in a granny flat.
Yeah.
So I engaged the team again to try to think about a next property in a granny flat. But then at that specific time, I think I was catching up with Hayden a bit, and Hayden had already moved to work with Pump and Property at the time.
Yeah.
And then Hayden mentioned that, like, if he could go back, he would actually, instead of doing a house granny flat, he would do multiple for capital growth, chasing that.
Yeah.
All right, because yeah, that was interesting. So then I did those other two in that 1 year, and then my last property, I was like, okay, maybe I'll buy that one, and then if it goes up, I can sell it to pay off some of the debt.
Sure. So that became more of a partner property at that time when you picked it up.
That's right. But now, thinking about it, I know that every time you sell, you have to pay heaps of tax, right? So that's why So I'm just like trying to work out, like, if I don't need to sell, I won't sell unless it's absolutely necessary.
Sure.
Yeah.
And what's necessary mean, like, to either raise a deposit, or because the financial position has changed, it's creating too much stress in your life and you just want to chunk off debt, like, which is the reason I sell, really, to speed up the purchase and also debt reduction on a PPR.
That's right. So it's either I'm hating my job and I need a break from work and I just need to cut some of that debt out and, like, just take some, just not feel like I have so much debt. Or yeah, that's probably, or I need the money for, like, a deposit to do my principal place of residence. But even then, like, I feel like after you go through just buying a property and just the stamp duty and everything involved, you would have to make a considerable gain in order to sell it off for a profit that you could then take to use.
Yeah.
So at this stage, I feel like it's still too early, and I'm a long-term investor at the end of the day. Whether it's crypto, whether it's houses, whether it's shares, it's all long-term for me.
So you've gone through this incredible period of accumulation, which doesn't come without its downsides too, right? Like, mental health wise, there's the excitement, but then there's the reality as well of, like, man, you're doing a whole lot of stuff outside of your job, and that's fun. Like, it occupies the headspace, and it's amazing, especially when you get short-term return like you have. But as you transition from this point, like, how do you manage a big portfolio like that at such a young age? Like, what little hacks have you put in place to sort of protect yourself and systemize that other people can sort of hopefully learn from you?
Good question. So the accumulation phase was so fun, right? It was so exciting
It's a
just to
great
engage with the
phase,
team
hey?
and just, like, looking at properties and just executing and just going through the whole process. I think especially in the last property that I purchased, the market was so hot then, everything was just super exciting. But obviously, I'm glad that's why a dollar cost average over the year for the 3 properties anyway.
Yeah.
But now moving into this phase, like, how am I sort of doing a few small things to help me manage? So with building insurance, I don't know how often this is probably talked on the channel, maybe not that often, and just because
Never,
I work in
'cause I
insurance.
can't, yeah.
Then obviously, you know, no financial advice. I'm sure the disclaimer always comes up anyway.
Yeah.
But for myself, just with my insurance background, like, when I'm actually going to access building insurance, mind you, Ben, I know you've accessed building insurance when one of your properties burned down, but it's more unlikely. So what I've done is I've increased the excess on it to reduce that overall, to reduce the premiums that I pay on a yearly basis, just for all of them.
Yeah.
Just because I noticed that with 4 properties and a granny flat, the insurance is quite, like, hefty.
Significant.
Yeah, and then the council rates and water rates, like, at the moment, I'm taking care of it. I know a lot of people send it over to their property managers just to take care of it.
To get them to pay them?
To get them to pay them, but because I also like to what they call credit card hacking, which is just like earning credit card points. I like to like just move my money around just so that I pay them last, like just so that I can have more money in my offset account, just to reduce interest wherever I can as well. Just a few small things here and there make a big difference. So
I love that.
whether it's offset account to have as much money in there, then I have like a credit card for general everyday spending to earn points to assist with just reducing expenses in general, because obviously the more expenses reduce, the more you save, the easier it is for you to retire, right? So
Big time.
the more points we generate, then we can sort of do a bit more traveling for cheaper or free.
Free, yeah.
Right? And it's all about reducing that expense, because you still want to live, you still want to travel, right?
Yeah, 100%.
You still want to travel.
You know, again, not advice, but which credit cards, because I know how detailed you are. Like myself, if I'm down the hole, I'm digging past the bottom to figure out what's really going on. Is there companies that have great incentives at the moment that you can recommend?
At the one that I'm on at the moment was obviously the Qantas one, because I feel like Qantas is easy for everyone to sort of get started on. You look at, they normally have like a minimum spend of like $3,000 in like 3 months, which I feel like people would be surprised how much they actually spend if they start tracking their budgets and stuff.
You can buy your food and stuff with it, right? And as long as you pay off in the interest-free period,
That's
you get
exactly
the points.
Right. Exactly right. And then they probably get like 90,000 points or something like that. And I think they could probably exchange that for like at least a free domestic.
Dude, I need this going, hey.
It's like
a big deal.
I think it's great if you have an offset account, because then you can keep all of the money in your offset account, and then like interest is accruable every single day, then transfer it to the credit card when you need to. So it's always going to be in your offset account every single day. But obviously there's a lot of negative stigma attached to credit cards, because people jump on credit cards when they're, younger, and then they overspend what they actually can have, and then they can end up in a lot of bad debt. And obviously bad debt, it's just very, very challenging just to get out of that in general.
Yeah.
So it's just trying to undo that and just not have that stigma attached to debt.
I love that. And is there any other little hacks like those that, just making the systems, I suppose, for like the tax side of things more simpler for yourself? Like I, for example, have one offset account where all of my income's going to, all of my expenses for each of those properties come out of that one account. They're all labelled per property. Once a month, my wife just prints it out, puts it into a spreadsheet for each property, and then it's just given to the accountant. So the accountant's time's not spent on, figuring out what the hell is going on. It's spent on strategically working out how we can like work within the system to make things better.
Yep. I wish I had a great system like that, Ben. I feel like I'm still so manual.
Yeah.
Because like with my accountant, it does take me quite a task every single year, because I have a few properties now. I should honestly come up with a better system to work this through. But my previous job before I just recently changed just required a lot of just being thorough. And then I just like to, it's a bad habit, it just go through like every single thing just right before, so it's fresh in case any questions come up for me to utilize, but it's inefficient.
Yeah.
And whenever tax time comes around, mind you, I know that like I'm most likely going to get a return, but I know that I'm getting ready for a big task to do, and that's not what you want. You want to obviously
that's what I also did for like 13 years, by the way, and it was just like I'd have every account would either have a Google Drive like thing, in email, or not Google Drive, but just a folder in emails, and then it would have like a plastic sleeve, and I just pull it all out and just try and make my way through it. And I used to dread it because it ended up becoming like an 8 to 10 hour task on one day, pretty much on the last day of the financial year, or like the day before I was going to see them. And I'm like, there has to be a better way.
There has to be a better way, right? So especially with a challenging task, like you want to make your challenging task that you don't want to do with like the least amount of barriers as possible, so that you're more likely to do any type of challenging task.
Yeah. Something that has helped me too, like I like the idea of like running my portfolio with 4 properties like a business. And when I pump all the money into the offset account that's incoming and I pull the outgoing, I always have like a ledger of like where the true position is day to day, week to week, month to month. And I like seeing now that I have granny flats and things like that, or when I get the tax benefits, they go straight in the same account, and it's like it's almost its own thing. It's like a fund for the insurances, the land taxes, the renovations, the maintenance, the other random stuff that comes up. So it's not a surprise, and it's not affecting any of my other personal stuff. But that's just me being OCD as always. And about 3 years ago, I just got to the point where I'm like, there's so many parts of my life that could be simpler, and I strategically work through one thing at a time until nothing's in my mind.
Yeah.
I work with a Microsoft to-do list, and I just have the insurance dates in there, plus the annual maintenance stuff, and even like the drafts for the emails that I'll send to the tax accountant, or the emails that I'll send to the property managers each year. And it's just everything that could be out of my brain is there, so I can be much more in the present moment.
That's so good, Ben.
Yeah, it's been fun to go through that, because it was more work up front, but significantly less work for the next, hopefully 60, 70 years.
Yeah, that's a lesson that I've got to take from one of your books. So just to improve that process overall, for sure.
Sweet, man. And if you think about the person that you were when you started this journey, which was in a relationship, I'm sure,
yes.
Training, earlier stage in career, but still balling out very fast on that, and the goals that you had then, how have the goals changed now that you're a family man? You've had your first kid recently, you're on paternity leave at the moment, hopefully relaxing a little bit, not consuming all the content.
So it's regarding the goal, so my goal was to replace income, and at the time, I don't know why, it just was never on my mind regarding a principal place of residence. I was just like, I just need to replace my income, just keep it simple. This is my one goal. And then obviously with baby coming along, now we're thinking about a principal place of residence and fighting an uphill battle in Sydney. It's quite challenging as well with just the price of the market.
Yeah.
Our goal at the moment has gone from, we have like a sufficient amount of money to replace the income, one of our incomes. How do we now transition that to getting our principal place of residence? Mm-hmm. And that's where our goal is at the moment.
I love that. It is tricky down here, and obviously you're in an incredible position in terms of the access to equity to support with that, but it still is, taking on 900k debt at 7% is like, it definitely commits to more work. And I did the same thing. Like, I went for that more expensive property once I started to have kids, and it just changes the path a bit. Like, you and I both know that it just, instead of getting there in the next 10 to 15 years, it can push that time frame out unless you start strategically looking at your portfolio from a different way and using leverage like smarter to wipe, like, because obviously wiping that PPR debt quickly is also, it becomes a more relevant goal when it's sitting over the top of you.
And like, it's interesting because it really makes you adjust and change your goalposts. Like, don't quote me on this one, I might be wrong, but I remember speaking to my mortgage broker, every kid that you have reduces your borrowing capacity by like around $50,000.
Yeah.
So then, like, with a little baby coming along, we have to sort of figure out how we can adjust our finance. And I think that's one of the reasons we decided to move back home, because we knew that with Sydney rental prices, as well as with childcare, there's going to be a lot more savings. So we make sacrifices now so that we could, mind you, there's sacrifices, but there's heaps of rewards, right? Because my parents are amazing taking care of Magnet. Shout out to them. And even though they'll never listen to this. Yeah, like, it's just the childcare, as well as like the childcare cost with the rental cost together.
It's pretty
$60,000.
Wow.
Yeah, it's about $60,000, or like, just through our calculations. So it'd probably be more, because our rental in city was going to increase by $200 a week. So it would be probably a lot more than that as well. But that's, instead of $60,000 going into these fees, it helps us sort of build a bit more of a, whether it's an emergency fund or a deposit or anything we want to put forward.
I moved into Lisa's parents' house 3 to 4 times in the last 10 years. Either into like their tiny, we call it a granny flat, but it was basically a 3x3 bedroom behind their garage. And at one point it was me, Lisa, and the 3 kids plus my dog, like, most nights in this little space. I remember one night my dog decided to take a poo in the room with all of us in there, and I just woke up and I'm like, oh my gosh, Lisa, what's going on? But it saved us. It was just so helpful to be around community when the kids were really young as well. Like, it wasn't even about the money, although it was absolutely beautiful, but it was like, just having things looked after with more hands was just so beautiful at that point. A lot of people I talk to are like, I could never move into my in-laws, and I'm like, I fully get that, but I actually like them, and I don't know if they like me anymore after me being there, but I'm by far the highest maintenance person that they've ever met, but I enjoyed it. Like, it's all part of the journey, and I'm like, the same as you. I'm like, the 60K down the hole versus like doing that. We moved in when we we're building places, renovating places, or just, hey, like, this is tough. And we just need to like save for a little bit of time and give ourselves a bit of grace and a bit of like space between it becoming a bigger issue down the line and stressing for no reason.
I can't agree more. Like, I feel like the love that my family, as well as Wendy's family, have been able to provide by moving there, that's priceless. You know, like,
yeah.
Sure, there's heaps of financial, which is all I've spoken about, but it's the love behind that, and the like, just with the baby comes like just togetherness with the family.
Yeah, big time. Isn't it beautiful
really
to see
draws everyone, like, just happiness, because a baby, I feel like, you know, has thoughts empty. They're just like in their element, just mindfulness, you know, just like in their essence, right? There's no pollution from any negative thoughts or anything. They just like just living their life, playing their toys, doing their thing, and that's why I think, you know, when you look at babies or you look at pets, you can that's the energy that you probably resonate with.
Big time.
And it just helps you get into, like, almost like look into nature as well. Like, there's no thoughts, and when there's no thoughts, your head's clear and everything just seems nice.
Man, this is what I was really excited to talk about with you with today. Like, I'm so stoked that you're crushing it, man, and everything's working out. But like, you know, the hard time that you went through also leads you to self-discovery. I heard an incredible quote from today from Carl Jung. I think it was just on Instagram while I was putting something up, and he was like, those who look externally dream, those that look internally awaken. Oh, and wow. I was like, oh man, I screenshotted. I'm like, that is just gold and perfect timing. But what's that philosophical, spiritual, personal growth journey that you've been on? Like, where did it start? How has it helped? And what are a few books or tools that work for you that maybe other people that are struggling with mental health like we both have could vibe off?
It might be easier to first speak about the severity of like the mental health and how bad it was.
Yeah.
Because then, like, it was to the extent that, like, anytime anyone ever brought up work, like asked me how work was, or asked me how anything was, but not even how work was. And I jumped straight into like how horrible my work was, and it was just like I couldn't even focus on the road, because I remember Wendy and I had done a trip to Port Stephens, and I couldn't even focus on the road. That's how bad it was.
Knowing that you were going back soon?
No, like when I was going there. So just leaving there, like I wasn't even going back. And then I've also had instances where I jumped on the train. I've never felt this way before, but I really felt sick heading into work.
Yeah.
Physically sick, and every day was just the mental abuse how I had to go through was just really tough. And what I found was my saving grace at the time was I tried to listen to every single thing I could. Probably should have gone to therapy, but decided to listen to everything and try to learn, find my own way.
Yeah.
Mind you, you know, therapy is amazing as well, obviously. Yeah. But I'd come across Eckhart, and how did I come across Eckhart? That was interesting. I remember I decided to listen to the Power of Now audiobook, and at the time I was trying to get used to Eckhart's voice, and I'd fallen asleep and missed my stop because I just could not get used to his voice, and it took me 40 extra minutes to get back home. But it was it was through a whole year of almost smashing Eckhart content almost every single day.
Yeah.
That then I finally I can't believe it was every single day or just that intensive to resonate with his energy level and finally understand sort of where he was coming from, and just the ego identity and sort of just everything he spoke about. And I think people try a lot of different measures and try everything that you can to help you get through that, but sometimes it's doing something over an extended period of time as much as you possibly can, whether that's seeking therapy, whether it's like just listening to stuff that just makes you feel better.
It really does. Like, now that they're realizing how, like, I would know the right word, like malleable the brain is like the brain is a muscle that can change.
Yep.
I've been brushing my teeth with my left hand over the course of my holiday because I wanted to rewire the brain. Like, if I put pants on and my left foot goes first, I put my right down. Like, I'm trying to practice very, very conscious things to just rewire, because our brain is 99.9% habitual thoughts, and when those connections of suffering and I'm feeling sick going into work, and then there's a chemical reaction. Like if it goes through enough times, the only thing I found is like the required dose of whatever's helping reprogram the brain. And I listen to a lot of Eckhart. I've read A New Earth and The Power of Now, and I've probably listened to like the 10 episodes he did with Oprah on Super Soul 20 times, and I actually go back to them because it's like a safe place to remember. But
it's funny.
It was powerful, hey?
Yeah, it definitely is. Like if you go through my YouTube, like every single Eckhart video has probably been listened to. Like everything's on like res, like everything. And I think like there was one specific instance that I definitely should call out because I felt like this was a massive turning point in my life.
It was like the breakthrough moment.
It was a breakthrough moment. So it was a Friday. And in that specific day, there were 3 different instances. I can't even remember what the instances were that things had gone wrong in the day. And people would sort of I'd labeled that myself as I'm having a horrible day, right? And I was in a very bad headspace. I was frustrated and angry at the same time.
Yeah.
And I was speaking to my girlfriend at the time, which was Wendy, who's now my wife. And she was like, "Oh, like babe, you don't really chat with me at the moment just because like I could feel your negative frustration energy coming through."
Yeah. Wow.
And then I was like, okay. I decided to close my eyes, and then after 15 minutes, I opened my eyes, and all of that negative energy has dissipated.
What were you doing during that time? Were you focusing on the breath? So
initially I started focusing, so I brought all of my mental health practices and employed it then and there. Right. So initially I started focusing on the breath, right? And then I focused on the breath, and then I just focused on the breath first. And then I got to a point where then once the breath became normal, I let my brain try to think about whatever it wants to think about. And then
observe it without being
without judgment. Yeah. And then I focused on each like part of the limbs in like my body.
Yeah.
Just to have some body awareness. That helps as well. And then I had Eckhart's voice come up in my head. And then I used Eckhart's voice to question my thoughts and challenge every single thing that I interpreted that day.
Wow.
So whether I looked at this specific thing, just because it's funny because like, let's say, you know, you had your 6 months like holiday that you just recently did, Ben. And, you know, if someone asked you, like, if everything went well and how was your holiday? And you'd be like, you know, it's great. But then if you had a few things that went wrong, this would be a story that would go on for 30, 40 years that you would tell everyone about. It's just so easy to focus on the negative things.
True, yeah.
And you become so fixated on it, right? So when I started to challenge all of my thoughts on that specific day, then it became like you had interpreted your day to be horrible, but what about all of the things that went well that day that you didn't even notice? And then when I opened my eyes again and I started speaking to Wendy, she was like, what the hell just happened? Like, how did you just close your eyes in 15 minutes and your whole entire energy just shifted?
Wow.
And then from that point on, I was like,
I know
meditation works. Like before that, I'm like, I know meditation works for a lot of people. It just doesn't work for me. Right? It just doesn't work for me. It works for everyone else, it just doesn't work for me. Right? And then I was like, holy shit, this works. And then I became a lot more into all of that stuff because where I found that like my inner demons were sort of my worst enemy. That was what was holding me back from my own self-confidence, like my anxiety, my fear of everything, and just my inability. And then once I was able to break through that, then I started to propel and do a lot better at work. I started to do a lot better in all different categories because whenever I'm in the gym as well, it's demons that you're facing with, whether you can move that, run that, do this, right?
Or just even rocking up some
days.
Just
rocking up some days, right? Just a battle with itself.
Staying in after those first through, because you know as soon as you're in set 3, you're like, it's gold. Like, I mean, not even set 3 of the first exercise. Like as soon as I've done my first like 2 lots of 10, I'm like, I'm all in now. Like, and I want to be there.
Yeah. And then, so that sort of established like the mental health aspect. And then the next thing I sort of came across was mental fortitude, which is sort of like, I read like David Goggins, and David Goggins is extreme, right?
He's a beast.
He's very, very extreme in sort of the things that he does. But I found that for me anyway, what I took from it was you don't need to be extreme as what he is, but
You
can
don't
still
want to do
take
3,000 pull-ups
Yes,
for
you don't
24
need to
hours
do-
straight, 7,000 in
But
24 hours.
it shows you that like there's a part of you that can build your like mental fortitude to an extent that if hard stuff comes your way, you're not going to break down. Sure, mental health is great. Mental health is when you've broken down to heal again, right? But what about the part where you got to build yourself up so that you're strong, so that you don't get like as hurt?
I love that.
So then I started doing things, and then at that specific time, I started reading Atomic Habits as well. And Atomic Habits dealt with dealing with hard stuff and how to sort of set proper habits. And then I started to rewire myself, my habits every single day. There was a point where I started to do ice baths every single week. That was a bit intense. Just did it just because I wanted to like show that I could do it.
Yes.
And just do things that previously I would be like, that's maybe too hard, and just putting myself in a little bit more of uncomfortable situations to build
And
that.
I can experience stress, and I'm also resilient, and
Yeah.
I'll be okay.
And I'll be okay.
And then, actually, that was hard today. Like, you know, the ice bath thing, like, because I'm in the pool 365 days a year, and right now it's freaking cold. Like, it's gotten to the point where I'd say it's below 14, which at 6 o'clock in the morning is a challenge.
Yeah.
But I believe changing that state after listening to Tim Ferriss, like nothing that I'll ever say to you is Ben's. I'm just the king of ripping his ideas. But by changing the state first, inside the body, then the story, like today is going to be a great day because I just overcame something hard and I'm on top of my, not in a controlling way, but like I've got this, like I did something hard and now I'm feeling good. And then the strategy, well, what am I actually going to do today to execute on the values in my life that are important? And I just ordered a sauna and an ice bath. Like when you guys come up to Queensland, man, like, and a full-on gym.
That's a dream for me.
Like it's my dream.
Yeah.
22 years in the making since the day I started isolated weight training.
Yeah.
And I'm like a kid in the candy store. Like it's not all set up yet, but I put all the equipment in and I've just got to get the Sparky out.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I'm frothing on the idea of, I love your concept of mental fortitude. Like I was broken and I sat in the suffering. No one except you in my whole life. And I've gone to therapy and listened to everything. Part of it is the rebuilding of getting strong and getting that passion and that strength back. And now my gratitude is I'm so grateful for my character. I'm so grateful for that hard stuff. I'm so grateful for my strength. I'm so grateful for like the empathy it's given me. And I'm focusing on like constantly rebuilding myself up, reconnecting stuff. And when those thoughts come up, oh, that's just that thought. Like I was in a pretty dark hole like you were for a while. That's just that dark thought, you know what I mean? Like I can replace those habits in my actions. Why can't I replace the thoughts in my mind or just like let it pass?
Yeah.
Most of it's just letting it pass for me now because I like to hook onto shit and go down the hole and like put the lotion on.
No,
you know what I mean? Every now and then as
yeah.
like an intense person that likes training and likes achieving, it's like easy to, whoa, I didn't mean to go this far again. But I'm back.
Yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean.
And how has like all of this stuff changed your life for the better? Like if you think about the person you were finishing uni with everything ahead of you and then going through hardship, what's the day-to-day happiness look like for you? Like what actually, happiness is the wrong word, what brings you joy, fulfillment and a full life now?
The most basic things, right? So it's really, really basic. Like a lot of shiny things out there, out in the world, you know, but the things that just like, what I mean by basic things is just even just being around my son, just seeing my wife happy, seeing my parents healthy, and even just like whenever I get the chance to speak to people, and you know, I've probably had an opportunity to like speak to some of the colleagues that I work with and just share with them, because just some of my own investment journeys or some of my mental health journeys and sort of some of the hardships that I've gone through. Because a lot of them, like sometimes working in life insurance is tough. It's a tough role, and I think that's why, you know, it attracts a relatively decent starting salary.
Yeah.
But it's just the mental beating that you get from it at the start, because you're dealing with people in the toughest points in their life.
People can, you know, be pretty emotional, I'm imagining.
Yeah, it's tough. And just helping them see a path, like a little light at the end of the tunnel, that you can do something. You don't need to be super successful just to sort of earn that. So it's just sort of the interactions that I have, positive interaction, and just just being able to sort of ripple that energy through to other people that I speak with and just resonate with that energy as well. I think that's really, really lovely.
Oh man, it's beautiful. Hey, like service. I was reading a book recently. I think the guy was Arthur Brooks. He's in that Oprah world now, Catholic guy, but he wrote this concept of like, as we get older, hustling, chasing shiny things can really, really work in a positive way in your teens, early 20s, even 30s. But the culture in society is so focused on continuing to chase them past the genetic point where that continues to bring happiness. In fact, it's just a declining curve over time in terms of ability and also happiness off the result of it. And he said, as we move into our mid to late 30s, naturally in community and tribe, we would be focusing on sharing what we've learned and helping other people and service as a path to like self. And most people are just starting their journey in their like late 30s, 40s, because that's the point where careers got stable, you know, their debt on their homes got comfortable, if they've bought one, or, you know, it's finally time to do something.
Yep.
And, you know, everything that I see online is about the grind, the hustle, the sacrifice, the delayed gratification versus, man, just focus on helping someone else and like taking everything that you've learned, like the suffering, the hardship, the good stuff, and just be like, pull, like, and it doesn't have to be crazy stuff. It's just the random person that, you know, you can see is having a shit day and you just drop that little thing and it's like, well, man, so many people did that for us. I just couldn't see most of it at that time. I was seeing black or red. Yeah. If there was something that you could say to your, you know, 15 to 20-year-old self now, with everything that you've learned, what would you say to yourself? Like, what advice would you give to your younger self, knowing what you've done and achieved now?
I believe in karma, so good energy brings good energy back. I think like negative energy like gives you negative energy. So obviously, if you're like just someone that's grumpy every day, even if opportunities come your way, you would never see it anyway. Yeah, you'd be like blinded by that. So just continue to like have positive energy, Kevin. Keep being your original self, because when you find just who you are and who you're comfortable with, people will love that. And the people that don't love that, it's okay.
Yeah, they're not your peeps.
They're not your peeps, right? They're not your peeps. And that's okay too, you know. Everyone's different. You can't expect everyone to like you. You just be yourself. And then the people that love you will love you.
Yeah, and I would add from my perspective, just it's all going to be cool. Like, it's all conspiring for you and it's all going to work out. It just feels like, unless you approach it as like growth, like you and I break our muscles for fun. What's wrong with breaking your mind every now and then? Like, but we get so caught up in the emotional feeling of that. And I did for so many years, and I break my bicep. What's the difference if my brain splits a couple of times a week because I'm growing? Not too far, like, but if this is comfort and this is like a breakdown, then just outside of that is a very healthy feeling to be in for most people, because it's progress.
Completely agree.
Oh man, I'm so grateful to have you on here finally. Hey man, it's so good to see ya. And I'm excited to see this next phase of your journey as well. PPR, one kid now, maybe another one on the way at some point down the line. It's just very cool.
I got to listen to that advice that I just provided myself for now, for the future.
Is this always a mirror, man? Every time I'm talking to you, I'm like, oh, where's the mirror?
Yeah. But thank you for just taking me on this journey and just being part of the team. Like, it's been life changing.
Thanks, bro.
Cheers, all good.
If you're thinking about buying an investment property in the next 3 to 6 months, then the team and I at Pumped On Property would love to offer you a one-on-one strategy session. To book the session, all you have to do is go to www.pumpedonproperty.com and click that free strategy session button. Now, in the session, we'll talk about exactly where you are right now, where you'd like to be longer term, and educate you deeply on the Australian property market. You can then take that information and go and absolutely smash it on your own, or potentially become one of the small number of clients that we work with each month. Either way, we look forward to continuing to help you build your property portfolio with confidence on your journey to financial freedom.